Outskirts of Dereham. Health bosses say the Toftwood Surgery needs modernising and is too small for the needs of patients. But lots of people living locally are worried about longer appointment waits and struggles getting to alternative practices. A couple of weeks ago, local MP George Freeman held a meeting about this and can join us now. George, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Chris.
Having had meetings with worried patients and I think the local NHS as well, where are you with this? How much optimism do you have about Toftwood Surgery staying open? Do you even think it should stay open?
Well, look, the headline on this is that we've got more and more housing coming into our area, across mid-Norfolk, across large parts of Norfolk. And it is really key that the local NHS are empowered to and supported to plan provision to meet the new housing demand. Across my constituency, I've seen large-scale housing estates dumped on the outskirts of villages and big developments without any infrastructure, without the public facilities. And it was me who changed the law, actually, back in the coalition. Believe it or not, until then, the NHS wasn't even a statutory consultee on new housing. So it is now. And that's what this is about. And Dereham, over the last 10 years, has seen pretty significant growth, particularly in the south of Dereham, in Toftwood. And so I was very concerned when I heard that the local NHS were proposing to close the Toftwood Surgery and reallocate patients to the other two surgeries in town, for several reasons. Firstly, Toftwood is growing. It's already under huge pressure. And anyone who knows Dereham in the mornings knows huge traffic problems as people try to get into the middle of town and out onto the A47. So it's not fair on the residents of South Dereham. They need a community health centre. And one of the big challenges for the health system and our county is better local provision, community facilities, instead of everyone having to ship to the hospital. And Wes Streeting rightly has said this is a priority. So I've, in the last month, been trying to bang some heads together with the local NHS to see whether we couldn't either keep the Toftwood Surgery as it is at the moment going, but also while we plan a much more expanded set of facilities for the whole of Dereham, particularly in the south. The problem is, these surgeries are private landlords and GPs running their surgeries effectively as businesses within the NHS. So all the parties have to negotiate and agree. And it hasn't been possible in this case to get the landlord and the local NHS and the GPs to agree on the expansion that's required for the Toftwood site. So I'm calling for, to make sure that any short-term measures at the other two surgeries are properly funded and properly delivered, but most importantly, that we get a proper plan for Dereham in the long term.
So, in short then, the idea of Toftwood Surgery staying open, all the arguments you've just put forward there have been voiced very, very vociferously to the NHS locally. They still say the building's not up to it. It's too small for the needs of patients. So it doesn't sound like there's much hope of the building's being kept going.
No, well, in the last 6 weeks, I've had multiple meetings with the landlord and the local NHS management to try and see whether I could broker an agreement. The NHS, they need a 5-year break clause. They can't commit to 10 years at this stage. We got that agreed. They need the rent to reflect the quality of the building. We got that agreed. The issue is the expansion of the site, of the premises. The landlord wants to build it properly. The NHS want to put modular units in. And in the end, they haven't been able to agree. And I can't force it. Nobody can force it. In the end, you need the landlord and the GP providers who are actually going to provide the services to agree. I fear that hasn't been possible. I mean, it's up to them. But if it isn't, then I want us to look at an alternative site in South Dereham, and both for Toftwood, but also for the villages around. And if you look at the Fred Nicholson site, the expansion of the special needs school, which I've secured the funding for, just down the road at Swaffham, we're going to have a major new centre. That will release a major site in South Dereham, which I really feel should not be just converted into housing. It should be used as a community hub with a community medicine centre, GP, and other local services. And I'm going to be urging, through the work I'm doing with the Dereham councillors and the Dereham community groups on the Dereham Town Action Plan group to try and get some proper facilities in the south of town.
So, in short, to finish with, the whether or not Toftwood Surgery closes or not, that's not the end of the matter. That is almost I suppose, the beginning of the next stage of making sure that there is adequate medical care and medical facilities for people in that part of Norfolk.
Yeah, completely. We can't keep building houses. And by the way, the new government have just increased the housing allocation to Mid-Norfolk by 50%. And there are going to be a lot more houses coming, particularly to Dereham, which until now has been relatively, most of the new housing has been targeted down on the A11. So there's a lot more new housing coming, and we cannot keep building housing without facilities, particularly GP, dentist, schools, and, proper drains and infrastructure. So this is a part of a bigger story. If our part of the world is going to get more housing, we've got to make sure we get the proper health facilities at the same time.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning, George Freeman, who's the MP there for Mid-Norfolk, talking about the issues with Toftwood Surgery and whether or not it's possible to keep it open. It's sounding, without wishing to preempt anything, it's sounding from what George Freeman is saying there like it's going to be very difficult to keep it open in its current form. But actually, what needs to happen now is that those involved need to think about what they're going to do next to replace it. So we'll keep on top of this one and let you know when final decisions are made. 0800 3897 321.